One of the most iconic aspects of Halo is its vehicles. When you think of Halo, something that comes to mind might be the Warthog. This vehicle is perhaps one of the most well-known fictional vehicles ever made. To date, several have been built in real life, whether that's for promotional reasons, a prop for a live-action production, or just a fan's project car build. Vehicles have been such an important part of Halo's sandbox since its inception in Halo Combat Evolved that Halo wouldn't be right without them. Every Halo game has levels with a vehicle-dominated section, and these have made up some of the most fun missions in the series. But not every vehicle in Halo has gotten the same amount of love and attention as, say, the Warthog or the Ghost. In this video, we're going to look at every vehicle that has only ever appeared in Halo once. But first, a slight disclaimer. The vehicles included in this video do have to be drivable, so certain vehicles such as the Shadow in Halo 2 will not count. Another slight disclaimer, I'm going to make a couple of exceptions for vehicles that have appeared more than once, but were either so awesome and unique they deserve being talked about, or they were only usable in, say, multiplayer in one Halo, but in all modes in a previous Halo. I'm also not including things like various shade turrets or other weapon platforms like the Mac gun that you see at the end of Halo Reach. But with that said, let's get straight into this, starting with Halo 2. Starting off with the Spectre, this vehicle only appeared in Halo 2 on the missions Quarantine Zone, Uprising and The Great Journey. This vehicle was the Covenant's counterpart to the Warthog, although it did behave a bit differently, the most notable being that unlike the Warthog being a wheel-based car, the Spectre shares properties to that of the Ghost, being that it hovers. This allows it to be very maneuverable, allowing the driver to strafe and quickly pivot the Spectre in different directions. Also, unlike the Warthog, it allowed for 2 passengers, although they won't be as well protected as passengers in the Warthog. This is because they're more exposed to small arms fire and splash from explosions. The plasma turret, while very stable, would require the gunner to lead their shots slightly, as the velocity of the plasma bolts is slower than that of the bullets fired from the Warthog chain gun. It was also incredibly quick, having unlimited boost, making it an ideal vehicle choice to get a team of players to the other side of the map in multiplayer, which also makes it great for objective-based game modes like Capture the Flag. Despite this, it only appeared in 2 maps, those being Coagulation and Burial Mound. Although it was originally intended to appear in Halo Combat Evolved, and it can be seen in the original Halo CE demo, although it looks a bit different here, sporting a red colour scheme rather than the purple seen in Halo 2. So how about the lore? Built by Assembly Forges, the Spectre was a light scouting vehicle used to facilitate escort support and security detail during occupational campaigns. It featured a booster that could operate for extended periods of time and a high rate of fire plasma cannon, of which both components were powered by an internal plasma battery. Able to carry 1 driver, 1 gunner and 2 passengers, the most common version seen during the war was the WASM pattern Spectre. Moving on to Halo 3, we have a couple vehicles here that I want to talk about. First off is the Brute Prowler. While the Spectre may be gone seemingly forever, the Prowler is here to take its place, fulfilling many of the same roles as the Spectre, whilst featuring a vastly different design. But like the Spectre, the Prowler was a relatively rare sight in Halo 3, only appearing on 2 campaign missions, those being the Ark and the Covenant. It also only appears on variants of multiplayer maps, such as Sandtrap and Avalanche. Even so, I imagine I'm not the only one who has fond memories of this vehicle. On the level the Ark, after taking out the AA gun, you emerge at a small basin with a crash longsword and a few marines ready to make a move on the Covenant. After dispatching a few enemies, you'll be attacked by 2 prowlers, and if all of your marines and ODSTs are still alive, you can now start a fun little raiding party with yourself and a few soldiers, with heavy weapons on 1 prowler and the rest of the troops riding the other. Despite only being in a small section of the game, this part is a core memory for me. The beautiful visuals of this level, paired with Marty's incredible music and momentous action destroying Covenant outposts, weaving through sandy ravines, was just awesome. There is yet to be a level like this recreated in Halo, and I think this was the best time to implement the Prowler. The design of the vehicle is also very unique and fits the theme of the Brutes very well. The jagged edges and big front end make it stand out from the otherwise curved and organic stylized vehicles like the Ghost and the Wraith. So what about the lore for the Prowler? Built by the Sacred Promissory, Prowler was a light Droll Hanai war sled, used for raids, recon and general infantry support. Despite its rugged looks, the Prowler is a swift, very maneuverable and perfectly crafted for the tactics of Brutes hunting packs. While its design originates from the forges of the Brutes' homeworld Dosiak, the Quavaru pattern Prowler has been upgraded with Covenant technology, such as a light plasma cannon and boosted gravity drive. The Prowler features seats for 1 driver, 1 gunner and 2 passengers on the side. Its jagged front end was employed to viciously mow down and impale enemy infantry. But before we move on, I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video, do please leave a like, as that will really help me out, and do hit the subscribe button if you want more content like this. But let's move on to the Hornet. Now, this air vehicle has technically appeared twice in Halo, once in Halo 3 and again in Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer, but for most of us, our fondest memories of this aircraft will be from Halo 3. It was the first UNSC aircraft made available for us to pilot. It's probably the most exciting vehicle in Halo 3, having good firepower with its heat-seeking missiles, good maneuverability, and also allowing you to transport 2 teammates or friendly NPCs on the side. Now, having 2 guys sitting on the side is a bit of a crazy idea. Just imagine how those Marines must have felt during the level of the Covenant. But this gave the Hornet great utility purposes on top of its impressive firepower. You could use it like a Warthog in game modes like Capture the Flag, where only 2 weapons posing a serious threat to it were the Spartan laser and the missile launcher. It could also go toe-to-toe with a Banshee and often beat them in a 1v1. This was because the missiles had greater tracking than the Banshee bomb, and the machine guns fire their bullets at a much faster velocity than the Banshee. Its only real disadvantage was the passengers would be exposed, but you're probably not going to be worried about them unless you're trying really hard to play the objective. Despite how awesome this vehicle is, it was locked mostly to variants of BTB, such as the Heavies game mode. But the best use case of the Hornet has to be in a level to Covenant, where it's given to you on 2 occasions for this mission. The first time is essentially that you use it to cross the ocean to get to the next tower, and with it you play through one of Halo's greatest set pieces, destroying anti-air wraiths, a swarm of Banshees and Phantoms, and a whole platoon of Brutes, completely mopping them up from a distance. Then after deactivating a tower, you drive a Scorpion for a moment, and then you're given the Hornet again for another epic set piece where you have an epic showdown with 2 Scarabs. Here you could safely obliterate the Scarabs from the sky, or if you dare you could attempt to land on them and take off once the Scarab's core has been taken care of. It's truly an epic way to end the final battle of the Human Covenant War. So what about the lore for the Hornet? Built by Mizraya Armory and having been in service since 2524, the Hornet is one of the most compact and lethal fast attack aircraft of the UNSC, usually used for combat recon, infantry insertions, and aerial strikes against isolated targets from a distance, making it a great option for hunting down armoured targets like tanks and infantry positions. Armed with dual 20mm autocannons and 6 auto-loading M651 missile launchers make this VTOL incredibly threatening. Now, we need to talk about the elephant in the room, that being the elephant. The elephant was unique in that it only appeared on the map Sandtrap. Later in MCC you'd be able to add it to other maps such as Avalanche, but for the longest time the only way the player could use it would be on the Sandtrap map. What an awesome thing this was. While it wasn't exactly an attack vehicle, it was fun using the elephant to drive half your enemy team around the map while fending off attacks from enemy vehicles. Every now and then your team's elephant and the enemy team's elephant would clash with both teams, attempting to board each other's elephants. Damn, I just said elephant like 3 times in the same sentence. It was really cool of Bungie to add something like this into the game, knowing that players would only be able to use it on one map. Aspects like this would be entirely absent from future Halo games, likely due to the devs not seeing much point designing something that could be only used in a few instances. But clearly it left a legacy on Halo due to it appearing as a mobile base in Halo Wars, being a major part of the final mission in ODST, and in Halo 4 a large vehicle with similarities to the elephant, that being the Mammoth, is the centerpiece of Halo 4's 5th mission. Now for the lore of the elephant. Constructed by Jotun Heavy Industries, the M313 Elephant's primary role is support and recovery operations, and also retrieving damaged vehicles from the battlefield. With its ability to anchor into the ground and its tough armoured carriage, the Elephant could secure and transport its cargo on even the most challenging terrains. While it was originally built for civilian purposes such as farming and mining, the Elephant was used extensively by the UNSC in a mobile, assault and support recovery roles. Now with Halo 3 out of the way, let's move on to Halo Reach. This game certainly had a few vehicles that were unique to this game, some of which are fan favourites, but starting off we have the Covenant Revenant. The Revenant is essentially the Wraith's younger brother and the Ghost cousin. An interesting vehicle for sure. It was very fast and nimble, more durable than the Ghost but not nearly as powerful as the Wraith. The weapon on the Revenant wasn't the best as it had a slow velocity and you would have to arc your shots for anything further than close to medium range, but in close quarters it could be quite devastating. Perhaps the coolest aspect of the Revenant is its design, having a sleek sports car-ish silhouette. It has a nice red colour to it, and if you look at the sides, parts of it look like a human built engine, and it even has features what look like very comfortable bucket seat. It also appears to be very driver orientated. If you take a close look at the driver's seat, the steering components and dash encompass the driver and also feature a very nice HD display. I wonder if the Covenant designer of this sat in a Toyota Supra and really liked the interior. Seriously, this vehicle looks like it was built to accommodate a human rather than an elite. The Revenant is usable on 3 campaign missions in Reach, those being Sword Base, Tip of the Spear and the Package. But for most of us, our most fond memory of the Revenant will be during Tip of the Spear. Right after hunting down an elite zealot, there's one parked right outside the refinery. You could then hop in and go for a little joyride through a twisty canyon, and then fight a Wraith and numerous Covenant infantry, followed by destroying the Covenant anti-air cannon. You might struggle to kill the drones with the mortar, but otherwise you can complete this entire section in just the Revenant. Now time for the lore of this rare Covenant coupe. Manufactured by the merchants of Quikos, the Revenant is a lightly armoured infantry support vehicle, filling the gap between the manoeuvrability of the Ghost and the firepower of the Wraith. The Revenant was popular with Covenant expeditionary forces and artifact hunting teams due to its speed and nimbleness and the medium mortar weapon. After the war on the planet of Venetia, the Revenant was popular with young Sangheili, seeing a resurgence for recreational purposes such as racing. On Venetia, various species have tinkered with the Revenant and have come together to make the most out of this fast floating machine. So there we have it, the Revenant is confirmed as a race car of the future. Next, we have to talk about the Sabre. I love what Bungie did with Halo, always providing us with fun vehicle sections, and the Sabre is one like no other. This is the first time in Halo we take to the stars in a starfighter. It is perhaps the most Star Wars-like vehicle in all of Halo. It was only usable on the mission Long Night of Solace. The idea here is to use the Sabre to deploy a bomb on a Covenant corvette, which will then be used to destroy the supercarrier harassing Reach. But first we need to defend Anchor 9 space station from waves of Covenant fighters including Banshees, Seraphs and Pelicans. While pretty straightforward, this mission is notoriously difficult on Legendary, where your Sabre can be destroyed in just a few hits, and the sheer number of enemy spacecraft will make this section incredibly challenging. But on the other difficulties it's not too bad, and it's a fun introduction to the Sabre. We then assault the Covenant ship, first taking out its engines, then its weapons, after which we then board the Covenant ship, which here the Sabres are unfortunately all destroyed when the bomb goes off. And yes, this does mean all the Marines and pilots that came with you do all perish on this mission as well. But for what it is, the Sabre is pretty cool. Gameplay wise it behaves similar to the Banshee, only much faster, stronger and more powerful, featuring high caliber machine guns and heat seeking missile launchers, plus an energy shield, making the Sabre the first vehicle in Halo to feature such technology. What's quite interesting about the Sabre is how its launch is a lot like the space shuttle, with a 7-stage space entry, with various parts of the rocket booster detaching from the Sabre the closer it gets to space. Now for the lore on the Sabre. Made by Ushuaia Armory, the Sabre was tested in the rigours of orbital combat during the final years of the Human Covenant War. The Sabre was a well-armed, exo-atmospheric fighter designed to intercept its Covenant counterparts, such as the Space Banshees and Seraphs. Despite the Sabre's impressive kill count to loss ratio, the Sabre was not mass-produced until after the war, as only a few hundred were built during the conflict, with the project being considered top secret. Armed with two 30mm cannons and two Medusa missile launchers and protected by tough armour and an energy shield system, the Sabre was more than a match for the more technologically advanced Sabre fighters. One more vehicle to talk about in Halo Reach, and that is the Falcon. This might just be the Halo community's most requested vehicle to return to a Halo game, and hopefully this might be happening in the near future, as there is currently in-game footage of an almost finished Falcon working in Halo Infinite. But until that day comes, the only game where the Falcon has made an appearance is in Halo Reach. The Falcon is replacing the Hornet from Halo 3 here, and honestly I think this is a better, more fun aircraft to use. In campaign, the Hornet is armed with a chin-mounted chain gun that can quickly make work of any Covenant infantry and stationary shade turrets. It can either have two machine guns or two automatic grenade launchers fitted to the sides of the Falcon, usable by passengers. Like a lot of you, I really miss the Falcon. It's one of the first things that comes to mind when I think of Halo Reach, and it's featured in many Halo Reach missions, whether you're simply riding in it to your mission's objective, or blasting away the Covenant with a side-mounted grenade launcher or machine gun, or even flying one yourself in the mission New Alexandria. The Falcon was always a good time to use in campaign and multiplayer, where in the latter it was a great team-based vehicle. As the primary weapon is removed here, you must rely on the gunners to deal with damage. On the Spire map in multiplayer, it was often used extensively by players to strafe the top of the Spire with gunfire, or drop off players to secure the objective. It was also incredibly quick, and could even fly faster than a Banshee thanks to its turbojet engines. For me, the best time with the Falcon was on the level New Alexandria, where the Falcon is the main method of transportation across the city. There is something really fun taking the role of air support, chasing down Banshees and Phantoms, and clearing an LZ with the chain gun. And also the takeoff and landing for the Falcon is really satisfying, and I can't be the only one that tried to land this thing as carefully and realistically as possible on the landing pads of the skyscrapers. So here's hoping the Falcon does make it into Halo Infinite, and also makes it into the campaign. Imagine how fun it would be to fly around Zeta Halo with a squad of Marines blasting grenades and machine gun fire down on vanished outposts. So what about the lore for the Falcon then? The UH-144 Falcon was an attack and utility helicopter built by Mizraya Armory. A highly versatile, transverse, rotary multi-purpose helicopter, it was a powerful aircraft that could also ferry a squad of troops without the need for a much larger and expensive Pelican. Primarily used by the UNSC Army, the Falcon is usually armed with a 20mm autocannon on its chin, and either two M460 40mm automatic grenade launchers, or two M247H 12x7mm heavy machine guns. Now, quickly before going on to Halo 4, we do have a few honourable mentions to make for Halo Reach, those being the Spade, a civilian all-terrain vehicle built by Turbogen, and popular with colonial settlers due to its affordability, and was powered by a methane-based engine. The Tractor unit was a heavy-duty vehicle used to move various trailers, and you can drive one in the level with the Pillar of Autumn. The Husiv HU-1500 is a hydrogen-powered truck built by Husiv Industries. The electric cart is the best vehicle in Halo and can be used on a level sword base. And finally, we have the powerhouse, that is the S2 Traxxas Cargo Forklift. While never employed in such a manner, it could probably easily destroy a Covenant supercarrier, and it can also be used on a level sword base. With Halo Reach said and done, now it's time to move on to Halo 4. Again, like the Hornet, I'm going to make an exception here for one vehicle in particular, and that is the Mantis. The Mantis was included in Halo 5, but unless you was using one of the more powerful variants such as the Oni or Hannibal Mantis, you felt like you was walking around in a mech made of paper mache. But in Halo 4, this mech was insanely powerful in both campaign and in multiplayer. This was the first time a vehicle like this was usable in an FPS Halo game, where previously vehicles like the Mantis were locked to Halo Wars, with mechs like the Cyclops. Towering over every enemy and other vehicle in the game, the Mantis was a very imposing sight to behold and gave you a sense of incredible power while you were piloting one. Armed with machine guns, missiles, and also being the first vehicle to feature a melee stomp, it could also crouch and teabag, plus it came with an energy shield, making this a very unique addition to the Halo sandbox. Because it was so powerful, it was only featured on a few Halo 4 multiplayer maps, but was used in some action set pieces on a Halo 4's campaign and in Spartanobs. Namely, it was usable in the campaign missions Infinity, where you fight your way through the ship, taking out Covenant and Promethean intruders, while ending in a great crescendo where you fight off waves of phantoms and force the Didact to retreat. Honestly, my favourite moment from the campaign, and why I'm not too harsh on Halo 4 as a whole. I also love the animation of the Mantis appearing out of the ship's floor. You also use the Mantis again in the level Composer, where you must defend the Composer from the Covenant. Like previous uses of the Mantis, this section of the game is very action-packed, with multiple waves of enemies converging on your position, but with the Mantis' firepower, you should be able to complete this section without dying. This is another vehicle, like the Falcon, I would love to see return to Halo in the future. So what about the lore for the Mantis? The Hrunting Yeagscadrill Mark 9 armor defense system, otherwise known as the Mantis, was the most prominent powered exoskeleton at the close of the Covenant War. Sleek and nimble, it could navigate difficult terrain, using an advanced neural link to connect the armor and the pilot. It was also armed with a formidable arsenal featuring 20mm rotary machine guns and an M5 920 missile launcher. In addition, the Mantis was protected by a durable energy shield on top of its already impressive armoured hull. Moving on now, it's time to talk about Halo 4's Pelican gunship, which appears in the Halo 4 mission Shutdown. Once again, this is a mission where you will need to use an air vehicle to reach your objectives. I'll be honest, this is probably my least favourite mission in Halo 4's campaign, largely due to the mission objectives feeling very samey, but it's good that we finally got the chance to fly a Pelican outside of Reach's Easter egg version. Now, this Pelican, being a gunship, meant it was packed to the brim with weapons, even more so in co-op. In single player, it featured a chin-mounted heavy machine gun and a Spartan laser, as well as lots of infantry weapons found on the side of the Pelican. However, in co-op, it also featured an additional 2 heavy machine guns on the side of the Pelican and a tank-like turret on the top, making the Pelican a formidable beast. Eventually this would be added to Halo 4's Forge on the MCC version of the game, but otherwise the Pelican is exclusive to this one campaign mission. The design of the Halo 4 Pelican leaves me feeling mixed. While I appreciate it resembles that of a Hind helicopter, probably my favourite helicopter on looks alone, the Halo 4 Pelican for me is too much of a breakaway from the classic and iconic design of the original Pelican. I'm curious as to what you guys think of the design of the Halo 4 Pelican, and which one you prefer, this one or the classic design. It's strange that despite being such an iconic vehicle for Halo, the Pelican is rarely flyable. Players have been wanting to get behind the controls of one of these since the very first game, and that desire is still very strong today. Well, how about the lore for the Pelican gunship? The gunship 79 heavy troop carrier was an aggressively weaponized version of the D-79 Pelican, armed with a variety of weaponry including a dorsal mounted 90mm cannon, an M8C non-linear laser weapon system, and a GAL 53 70mm heavy autocannon, and 2 M410 dual heavy machine guns. While it may seem excessively armed, the gunship 79 was viewed as a key asset for the UNSC's Requiem campaign. Now, one more vehicle to talk about for Halo 4, and that is the broadsword. Once again, we find ourselves in a UNSC starfighter, this time on Halo 4's final campaign mission, Midnight. For the most part, the usage of the broadsword is more linear, essentially granting us a starfighter themed Warthog run, where we fly through the trenches of a Didact ship and then clearing the way so the Infinity can punch a hole in the ship so we can access its interior. Overall, the first stage of this mission is pretty cool, and I always appreciate the levels in Halo that mix up the mission with vehicle and infantry gameplay. Is it as good as Tip of the Spear? Well, maybe not, but the level certainly does feel thematically awesome, and does feel reminiscent of Star Wars A New Hope, where Luke is flying his X-Wing through the trenches of the Death Star. Visually, the broadsword resembles some real-life fighter jets, with the front end showing some resemblances to the Harrier jump jet, while the wings look a little bit similar to those found on the SG-24, although I admit I'm not hugely knowledgeable on military aircraft, so if you know more about what inspired the broadsword, do say so in the comments below. Like the Pelican, the broadsword will later be added to Halo 4's Forge on the MCC version of the game, where you can fully appreciate just how fast this thing is, far surpassing the speed of the Banshee. Before we move on to the next game, let's go over the lore of the broadsword. Built by Mizraya Armory and introduced in 2535 and utilised by most UNSC Navy and Air Force branches, the broadsword is a single-seat, multi-role, exo-atmospheric fighter that excels at operations demanding high manoeuvrability and precision combat. Featuring an energy shield derived from the technology used in the Sabre, the F-41 is armed with two M1075 35mm autocannons and two M6088 Medusa missile launchers. In addition to standard weaponry, the broadsword is capable of carrying out nuclear strikes, being able to carry a Havoc-class nuclear warhead. With 343 Industries' first Halo game out of the way, let's move on to their second game, that being Halo 5. Only one vehicle to talk about here, and that is the Phaeton. This vehicle is quite exciting, and I always say, despite all of Halo 5's shortcomings, the one thing that it got right was its sandbox. Not just the weapons, but the vehicles as well. And with Halo 5, we get our first, and to this day, only Forerunner vehicle. At Halo 5's launch, there was no UNSC aircraft, so you had the Banshee and you had the Phaeton, both fulfilling different roles. While the Banshee was for quick and nimble attacks, the Phaeton was more like a gunship and shared some gameplay properties to that of the Hornet. This being a Forerunner aircraft meant it was far more advanced in its looks, weapons and abilities. While still being a VTOL like the Hornet, the Phaeton was able to teleport short distances to evade incoming missiles, small arms fire, and it also featured two hard light automatic guns and a Forerunner missile launcher. It featured in the Halo 5 missions Evacuation and Genesis. While it was fairly powerful, it had a major weak point, that being the underside, where it could be destroyed with one magazine from a battle rifle. In multiplayer it was a rare sight indeed, as most of the time it really only appeared in the Warzone game mode, and it was a high level rack unlock, meaning you would only see it in the final third of a Warzone match. And due to Halo 5's unlock system, there was not a proper way to guarantee unlocking it early on. You would have to open multiple rec packs to get the permanent unlock. While certainly unique, during Halo 5's heyday, for a long time, players were asking for a UNSC aircraft, which would eventually come in the form of the Wasp, but if I had to pick between having a UNSC aircraft like the Falcon or the Hornet, or something Forerunner like the Phaeton, I would actually pick the UNSC option, purely because most of the time, they are not single-seaters and have more utility purposes when you can carry teammates or friendly NPCs into battle. So, what about the lore for the Phaeton? Created by Forerunner minor assembly vats, the Phaeton was one of the smallest Forerunner weapon ships, a single pilot combat fighter that was usually employed for combat missions on planetary surfaces. A single warrior servant could command tens of thousands of these craft during containment operations against the Flood. Millions of the craft would operate like a phalanx, cutting into the heart of Flood hives. Though produced in an immense number, few survived to see the firing of the Halo rings, with new ones being built by Cortana's created forces. On to the newest entry in the series, that being Halo Infinite. Once again, only one vehicle to talk about here, and that is the Razorback. Over the years, the idea of a vehicle that can hold a whole squad of troops has taken many forms, but never remained the same. First it was the Spectre, then it was the Prowler, then it took to disguise with a Falcon, and now makes a return with the Razorback, the Warthog's bigger brother. With Halo Infinite being mostly open world, well, kinda, you could spawn in the Razorback very early on in the game and take it with you anywhere on Zeta Halo. As it comes, it has no offensive options other than running enemies over. However, you could turn this into a real warhorse, provided you had 5 marine passengers armed with some heavy weapons. This can be quite fun, especially if you arm your marines with some weapon variants like the heat-seeking rocket launcher or the arcane sentinel beam. You will quickly start dishing out a lot more damage than the Warthog, and thanks to the Razorback's stronger armor, you can take a beating in the process. While I'm not the biggest fan of Halo Infinite's campaign, I admit it was fun loading up a Razorback and storming banished positions. The marines are such a fun aspect of Halo, and in previous games I always tried to keep them alive and form as big of a squad of them as possible, and in Halo Infinite you more or less at all times can get a heavily armed squad to join you, and that is largely thanks to the Razorback. A new feature for Halo was being able to store an item on the back of certain vehicles, and you could do this with the Razorback, be it a weapon or a fusion coil to throw at your enemies. And finally, let's go over the lore of the Razorback. Built by Mizraya Armory, the Razorback is a purpose-built up-armored transport using many of the same technologies found in the Warthog. Despite lacking a weapon system, it was thanks to its additional armor that it was always a viable option in battlefield conditions. During the engagements on Zeta Halo, the Razorback was a major factor in ground operations for the UNSC resistance. Now, unfortunately, that was all the interesting lore I could find on the Razorback, but that does bring us to the end of the video. Certainly a lot of vehicles that have only made one appearance in Halo, and most of the time they seem to have fallen either into the troop transport category or some kind of unique aircraft category. I suppose I could have talked about some of the variants for Halo 5, but that could be a video all on in itself. Just a few things I wanted to say before leaving you. First of all, thank you all so much for watching this video. In the last video like this, I was not very well at all, but I got a lot of support in the comments, which really helped me get through that illness. If you did enjoy this video, I do recommend you go check out the one I just mentioned. It's called Weapons Only Appear in Halo Once, and I would love to know what vehicles you want to see return in future Halos, and maybe you might even have your own ideas for some unique vehicles. If you do, comment down below. So if you did like this video, please do leave a like. As I said, it really does help me out, and also consider subscribing for more Halo trivia videos like this, because we certainly do have a few more in the pipeline. But until next time, Spartans, I will see you in the next one.